All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 73 today, Consciousness and Meditation, with our new buddy, Brian Scott. You can check us out at mikeandmauricemindescape.com and patreon.com/Mike and Maurice. You can also go check out Brian's YouTube channel it's under Brian Scott, and his page is called The Reality Revolution. What's going on, Brian?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
So I think we initially met. I commented on something on a Facebook forum. You commented back. We had a little bit back and forth, and we figured out we were kind of into the same stuff, which is super cool. Love your YouTube channel. You do a lot of different
Thanks.
stuff, from guided meditation to talking about consciousness, and obviously your podcast. What kind of got you started down that road? Like, what was the catalyst to get you into this stuff?
I've always been interested in consciousness and how I reacted to certain experiments with my consciousness. So I've always meditated, and going all the way back when I first experienced psychedelics, and all of that stuff has been very interesting to me. But as I started to get better at it and understand it more, I had some crazy events happen in my life, and it felt like something more was going on than the traditional, oh no, I'm meditating, I'm suddenly finding enlightenment. I was starting to see unusual synchronicities and possibilities that I had gone into parallel universes. And I had a super crazy incident happen, and it felt like I had jumped into a parallel universe that just, there were too many little details that had changed, physical changes, people calling me, and it's a crazy story. We'll talk about it. But after that, I had gone on this, oh my gosh, am I insane? I didn't know if I had turned insane. It was a real
Right.
possibility. The scientist in me goes, it's likely that you're probably insane or going through some kind of post-traumatic stress disorder. Because at the time, I had some people had gone into my house, and it was a home invasion, and
Oh, wow.
somebody had shot at me, and the bullet
Wow.
bounced off my back.
Holy
And
Wow.
when this happened, it seemed kind of unusual and realistic. And while it was happening, it was very similar to a psychedelic experience, because I could see myself, and I could see different versions of reality. And the next day when I'm talking to my kids, they're acting different. There's new restaurants around my house. There's movies that all these changes. And I'm like, I think I've been in a parallel universe. So I started really exploring meditation, and if I could go into parallel universes. So that's been kind of my focus. And one of the reasons, I'm writing the book, and I have the podcast. I'm fascinated by all of it. I think there's something to all of this when we start researching it. But that's really what really exploded me into the place I'm at now.
Nice. So I gotta ask you, when you say a bullet bounced off your back, did it go into your body and like bounce off your spine, or how did that work?
Well, if it did not, so it was a dude was carrying a 22, and it was they had jumped over my backyard, and the backyard had a porch door,
Mhm.
and I had woken up, and my door was open, and I walked up. It was like I'm a big Bronco fan, so it was the day after the Super Bowl, and the Broncos had won. So I'd slayed all night in my couch, and so they had probably gone into my house and not seen me, and thought maybe I was gone,
Mhm.
because I was in the front. And I walked up to the door, and there's this guy standing there with a gun, and he pulls the trigger, and I shut the door to the porch door, and it was a double pane glass. So there was it was very likely it was just kind of an accidental, unusual occurrence, because the bullet went through each pane of glass, and I'm starting to run away, and it bounced, probably because it had low velocity. It
Gotcha.
had gone through those objects, but the whole event seemed surreal. And I had I had been exploring advanced meditation beforehand. I felt like I had seen this happen. I had accessed this moment, like
Like
there was a part of me.
precognition or something
Yes,
along.
absolutely. Some kind of precognition. When it was happening, it felt like I had already been through this, and that I was going through actions that had been programmed into me, as if I had gone back in time and communicated with myself, you need to do these things to get through this event. Because I had explored the idea of time exploration through my meditations. And some of that was just me playing around, not really deep down believing that there was truth to it. But I had, you go stub your toe, and then you go meditate and say, well, don't stub your toe, and maybe there's another version of you that doesn't stub your
Mhm.
toe. I was experimenting with stuff like that, and I had, it felt a lot like a psychedelic experience, but it felt like I had encountered a bunch of different higher selves of myself. Like they were all these versions of myself, and they kind of, I felt like they had communicated some of this stuff to me, but it was kind of faint. It's kind of when you have an experience, it's like a dream. It's kind of there. And so when this was happening, another unusual experience was that it felt like I had already experienced this. I knew this was coming, and there was reasons for it. And so I don't know. There's a really good chance that it's just kind of a weird accident, and I've read way too much into it because that's
Mhm.
how my mind works. But there might have been more to it, and that's what I've been trying to explore. Is there parallel universes? Can I explore parallel realities? How do so I start reading about physics, and I start reading about all these things, and I go back to exploring some of my psychedelic experiences, and that's what the book and the podcast kind of came from. And so if that gives you the best
Yeah,
explanation.
no, no, no. That's and to be honest, if we're talking about science and physics, I mean, obviously
Right.
now there's a lot of the top guys, your Sean Carrolls and different physicists who believe in the multiverse theory, which is
Yes.
obviously that there's not just this universe, but a ton of universes, and maybe we bumped into one causing the Big Bang, et
Right.
cetera, that kind of stuff. Now, um, it's interesting because if you would have said that 20, 30 years ago, or even I guess 15 years ago, they'd be like, what are you talking to? People would be like, what are
Poo
you
pooed
talking about?
you.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. But now, the more we know, and there's always the debate, you got your
Yeah.
Lawrence Krauss saying that everything came from nothing. And then you've got your other dudes, your Sean Carrolls and, so on that believe that there was something
Right.
that,
There's
but
the version of when we look out, we can see cold spots in, after the Big Bang. We can look out in the universe, we see cold spots, and we think, oh, there's a real chance that another universe bumped in to
Mhm.
our universe. That's one version of this.
Think of it like bubbles, if
Right.
for our audience,
Bubble
like
universes.
bubbles that come together and collide.
There's also this theory that we are constantly, every decision we make branches off into multiple parallel universes.
Yeah,
And
that's interesting.
it seems to me that the physicist part of me says that's impossible, that's ridiculous. And Michio Kaku talks about how that there's some ridiculous, but there's an expansion that they have started to research that mathematically we are not seeing the expansion that we should see in the universe. And there's some of this comes through when you talk about the multiverse in this method. Now, I had come upon a really fascinating book that I highly recommend that you will find interesting, called Reality Transurfing by
Okay.
Vadim Zeland. And also a physicist in Russia. And surprisingly, this book is incredibly popular in Russia. And it's just the idea is that we are constantly shifting in and out of parallel universes, and using our understanding of physics, how that affects your decision making. Because once you realize it, it does tend to affect, if you're moving into parallel universes. A lot of times when you hear about law of attraction, people think, oh, I'm attracting something to me, but no, you're actually going to a universe where this has already existed, and your
Mhm.
attention can
Mm.
move you through these universes. And his theory is, when you dream, your mind is actually access to all these different multiverses. And when you dream, you're gaining information from some other parallel reality. It is possible that these parallel realities don't actually exist, but there's an information field for them. And so we are still accessing the information field for that alternate universe, and then we can make it happen. Very much when we know a ball bounces, when we drop the ball, it's going to bounce a certain way. There's a probability that's built into that particle as it bounces, right?
Mhm.
So there's also, in all particles, there's a probability for every possible outcome that occurs, that's built into this informational field in the universe, which Zealand talks about. He
Like
calls it,
superposition, you mean?
very much so, that we are
Okay.
in a multiple superposition of states, but we have access to an information field that he calls the alternative space, that has the information for all of the future and all of the past. And then we are accessing that through our minds. And so I started applying some of these principles, and there's a part of me, of course, that wants it to be true.
Sure.
There's a part of me that's the sci-fi junkie that says, "Oh, please let this be true."
Mm.
So I know I'm aware of my own biases, and there's a part of me that wants this to be true. But there has been something from it that I have seen results from this and unusual coincidences and synchronicities. So it's really an open question to me. It's not something I'm sitting here telling you this is how it is.
Right.
It's just the idea of parallel universes and the way it affects our decision making is fascinating to me. That's all.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with a lot of that. I mean, I have similar sentiments on this whole thing too. Like I'm a believer. I want to believe, but at the same
Exactly.
time, I also bring a healthy dose of skepticism,
Right.
and I think you can be too skeptical though. Too,
You can be too
like I think
skeptical.
like we are living, breathing magic as it is. So
The best.
we
That's
we
great.
we exist, so it's like the fact that we're
Mhm.
here talking about this through machines that we created, which
Right.
no other thing that we know of has ever even come close to, is just astonishing. So when you start there and start to look at these things, it's a different set of views than somebody thinking about like abiogenesis at the beginning of our planet and
Right.
cells dividing and creating more complex, so when
Right.
scientists, I think you get stuck in the process of how they use the scientific method, and there's a lot of creative scientists out there that are awesome, and then there's some that are just very dogmatic too.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. But you see that across all spectrums. You see that, in regards to what we're talking about now. There's a lot of people that want to connect consciousness to physics and quantum physics, and
Yeah.
yet they do it in a very woo woo, if you
Woo woo
will,
way.
or like,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, it's like, what do we really know?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
the highest level something can reach is a theory, in the philosophy of science. So
Well, it's almost like the more we learn, the more we realize that we don't know.
Yeah.
Therefore, we
that's how I
gotta
feel
kind of
from doing this podcast. Like going in, I thought, oh man, this is this, and I had all these
right,
crazy
right.
ideas, and then we
Yeah.
get it, and I start doing the research and reading books and stuff. It's like, oh man,
It's,
there's
same
something
with me.
there, but it's not as crazy as I thought it
Right.
was.
And when I started my book, it was the same thing. And as I've researched, it's way more complicated and not exactly what I thought. One of the most interesting concepts continually see physicists talking about that I've seen some example that works with some of your discussion of ayahuasca and DMT,
Okay.
and at least the experiences that we have is time being non-linear. And
Mhm.
so, if you were to back away from the universe, you could see the end and beginning all at the same time. We have this idea, the way our minds work, it's the way we understand that things move from A to B to C to D in a linear fashion. When actuality, it's possible that the future exists already. And when you take an action, it's like time is a lake. And so you drop a pebble into the lake and it spreads out like a circle, like a wave into the past and into the future.
Hmm.
And when we, especially when I use float tanks, I notice this. And something, Megamind, another great book by Michael Hutchinson, he also noticed this. About every 90 minutes, there's this wave front that comes in. You see this energy coming in. And a lot of times, what we see when we have psychedelic experiences are these fractal images, these very powerful fractal combination of images. And this future time that's coming in is just an uncollapsed wavefront that has information about what happened in the future, and you're collapsing it into reality based on what we know about physics and how the observer effect and how you can collapse from wave to particle
Right.
and using the double slit experiment. There's this wave of wave energy coming in from future and past. That's why people have intuitions. They're tuned into this future that's coming in before it happens, and we have access to it. That's what fascinates me, is that we may have access to information coming in from the future and the past, and we may also be able to go back and change the past. How would you
Mhm.
know if you've changed the past?
I
If
mean,
you can,
you wouldn't.
through your consciousness, through some out of body experience, going back to some event and then changing it, you might not. It might not be a significant change, but it might be more mental.
Mhm.
So that fascinates me. And I think we're getting better, and really good meditators are starting to notice there's something to this, that there's an energy coming in, we're collapsing it. And it's something more than just pretty images that we have in our head.
Right.
And we might be seeing it better when we're taking certain psychedelics. It might be uncovering some part of our mind that's closing us off, because we wouldn't be able to exist if we were constantly walking around looking at all these crazy fractal images
Mhm.
that are
Right.
coming in. I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, no,
that
it totally does. I mean, we've talked about this on a couple episodes, but the interesting you bring up psychedelics and the fractals and all that stuff when you're on high
mhm,
doses, like if I've done some really high doses of psilocybin,
right.
and the second, I guess I could say that for my LSD experiences too. When you take high doses, it's the world in front of you almost dissolves and it becomes this other thing. And
Right.
yeah, some people will say, "Oh, it's just hallucinations and whatever," but I feel like it's not, because there's like a certain energy behind it. And we had one of our
Mhm.
buddies on who's very and he goes into depth with the stuff on his YouTube channel, but it's almost like a pareidolia. Like on a day-to-day basis, you're stuck in this mindset where your brain's used to connecting these certain dots, and then
Right.
you implement this substance, and all of a sudden it dissolves that pattern
Right.
recognition, and all of a sudden you're experiencing everything at once.
Right. It's like a veil is being lifted,
Right.
and it's not a hallucination. We're seeing reality. And obviously every psychedelic will have different effects. Some it's just kind of a little bit, you see it in the distance, and some it's really up close, and some you actually feel a presence, like it's more than
Right.
just the visual, and it's all fascinating to me. And so we is there parallel universes? I don't know, but that fractal wavefront, we may be it may carry with it multiple possibilities. If I get up and go to get an ice cream right now, there's a whole variety of different things will happen right now if I do that. If I end this interview right now, then a whole other universe will occur. And so we are given all of these. And so I think a lot of people, when they talk about enlightenment, they're tuned into this information field and they become more aware of it. And it may seem like some kind of super spiritual event, but it may just be that we're accessing information better than we were before. It's
Sure.
it's it's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I think about too is you know like what you're saying about the parallel, but I also
Right.
think when we decide to do something, so we talk about this. Maurice and I talk about this a lot.
Right.
A lot of people want to do a lot of things, but what's the difference between some people and other people? It's some people actually do those things and
Right.
create that path. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? There's a lot of people that talk a big game, and then when it comes up, it's time to step up to the plate and do
Right.
something, it's not there, or it's this, or it's an excuse, or whatever. So I do think that that's part of it. It's like you can manifest your own future if you just do it.
If you
Um,
take action.
yeah, I mean, I was
Right.
talking when I first started getting, and I had like this. I hate to say it because I think it's just so cheesy, but like this awakening when I first started getting
Right.
into this stuff and
Right.
meditation and thinking about these kind, because we had done psychedelics since we were in high school, but to actually think in these terms and respect these things and look at them
Use them
from
as
a
a
different
tool.
as a tool and different point of
Hmm.
view. I was talking with my uncle, and he's like, you can do anything you want to do, and it sounds cheesy, but it's true. And
It's
but there's
true.
certain, like, if I look, I'm not in the best shape, so if I said I want to become an Olympic athlete, that's a harder goal
Right.
or path than if I said I wanted to start a podcast. You know
You
what I'm
might be
saying?
able to do it with 20 hours a day and
Right,
really
exactly, but
dedicating with your
it's just
mind
a
in the right
harder
place. Yeah.
it's just a harder thing, and
Right.
it's going to take way more dedication, way more perseverance, and
Right.
so it's just one of those things where you can choose to do what you want and manifest your own
Right.
future. Do you have the willpower? Do you have the resources? Like that kind of stuff. So, in that regards, I think that that's true. And as cheesy as it sounds, I think we all have that within us.
Right.
Most people don't look at it like that, and most people are just fine with the day to day grind.
Right. When we talk about ideas like the law of attraction and reality creation, a lot of times people think it's a woo-woo thing, and
Right.
it really isn't. Uh, if you have a mindset, I can if you're focused on what can go wrong, then you're gonna always avoid things, and you're gonna be a little bit more concerned, and you're gonna be trying to avoid bad things from happening. But if you focus on what can go right, it does tend to adjust your actions that you take. And so sometimes it sounds kind of cliche, but by having that positive mindset over a regular basis, you take actions
Hmm.
and you end up having things come into your life that would have come without the woo woo. The woo woo may be a tiny part of it, something that we don't understand, but
Hmm.
some by attributing the woo woo to it, by thinking it's magic, I think sometimes we take away the power of this, that you can change your reality by changing the way you think. And
Right.
because you do that, you change the actions that you take. And it can be difficult for a lot of
Right.
people. It's difficult to, some people say you can't control your mind, and there may be ways to do it. The interesting thing is, as I've studied it, and something I talk about in the book, is we have this belief, if you really badly want something, you can get it. And part of my belief in reality transurfing is the opposite is true. If you really badly want something, you will usually get the opposite of it. There is a balancing forces.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting advancements in understanding the way the law of attraction and reality creation is that there is a balance that goes all the way back to the Buddhist idea of letting go and detachment, that if you really, really badly want something, then you will usually get the opposite of it. So you need to find a way to let go of the importance of whatever it is you're doing. Also, we never really consider the effects of the outside world. We are controlling things with our minds, but there's also corporations and
Mm-hmm.
groups of people that are universally creating realities, and we get sucked into these pendulums. That it may be government, it may be a family, it may be a culture, and all of those things are also creating reality. So a lot of what I'm discussing on the podcast in the book is that you're not alone in a vacuum. Everybody's creating their reality at the same time with their thoughts. And so you have to consider these balancing forces, and there's cause and effect that's going on. There's some balancing with that too.
No, yeah, that's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
What's your book about? Is it just about your life, or is it a specific topic, or?
It's The Reality Revolution, the mind-blowing movement to hack your reality is the title. And I'm talking about this revolution, the awakening that you're talking about. There's a revolution happening right now, I believe, that
100%.
people are coming into an understanding that their thoughts control reality more and more. And people are actually starting to see it. In the old days, maybe we had a thought manifest and it took 20 years, and now it's
Mhm.
taking in 2 weeks. We have technology that's like, you and I are able to talk, and we're connecting with people like never before. And technology is exponentially increasing our ability to take action and do things. So what we're seeing is our thoughts are starting to manifest much faster. But more importantly, we're also seeing our fears manifest on a large scale.
Mhm.
People that don't even know that their thoughts are creating these realities. We're seeing our fears in government and politics. And so we're
That's a
kind of
good
like
point.
at this point where there's low energy vibration and high energy vibration. And it's like, what choice are we going to take? We have a revolution in reality and how we understand how reality is created. And that's kind of what the book is talking about, is we have a choice. We're coming to this point where we can really take advantage of this, and we can have this incredible future. I think all the problems that we have can be solved through our minds. Global warming, all of these things, I think we have a real power through technology and the power of our minds to solve these things. Or we can just choose to be super afraid and scared. And
Yeah.
Well,
but more and more, our power is increasing. And I think you guys notice it too. We're talking about it more. It's there's something to it that's more than 10 years ago. People are saying, wow, my thoughts are really starting to come into fruition a lot more, and people are
Mhm.
noticing it. But people that aren't noticing are still having their realities come about too. And they're just
Right.
sitting dwelling on their fears and that kind of thing. So that the book's talking about all the different things that are, the movements, the law of attraction, Abraham Hicks, meditation, and is talking about this movement to hack your reality, kind of my experience about what's going on, and some examples and ways to take advantage of this, and some different meditational techniques and that kind of thing. I talk about quantum jumping, using meditation to try to go into parallel realities. And I'd explore different ways of doing that. And it's up for anybody that wants to try it. It's up to you to decide whether or not it works or not.
I was going to ask
Um,
you, what are your thoughts on the what was that, the Mandela effect?
there's obviously something to it. I do think when I read about, sometimes it's just people, they remember something differently. Like
Right.
the
That's what I think.
Bernstein. I think that most of the examples are people just had the um, one really good was the Ed McMahon. Ed McMahon was supposed to be the host of Publishers Clearinghouse. He was just the But he wasn't. We always remember, oh, he was
Mhm.
the main spokesman for Publishers, but he was actually a spokesman for a company that was just like Publishers Clearinghouse. We just don't remember the name. And so in our
Right.
mind, that's an example of that. And then, Bernstein Bears, it was always spelled like that. There may be a couple examples where that's happened. And I do believe that there may be something to it. But most of the examples that I'm reading about, people are really fishing a little bit, and some of it,
Yeah.
yeah,
My opinion on that is, and this is the way I think about it. So, a lot of the examples are from things that happened when we were in high school and college. And what
right,
happens is somebody will watch a movie, they won't remember,
right.
because our memories are
Telephone.
our memories are jacked. We think that we remember. I mean, I have a good memory,
It's true.
but I convince myself things sometimes where I'm like, and I go back, I'm like, oh, that was stupid that I thought that, but
Yeah,
um our memories are shit. So when people are using their brain to recall a funny line to joke around with their buddies or whatever, it's never like the exact one,
exactly. I think
so
that that's probably what's happening.
like Luke, I am your father, like all that
Right.
stuff. It's always you hear you go back in your
Yeah.
recall and you're just remembering things that you want to remember. So and then it snowballs and then other people hear it and you could say it's an effect like that, like where it just gets out in the world and then everybody, so
Right.
but yeah, that's what I think. I don't think that's one of the ones where I don't know why it has so much steam
Right.
behind it,
No, I,
but
I I agree with you. Uh, what I would say, my own theory, and I have no way of proving this, is that when we can travel from outside of our bodies to another consciousness, but if it's too different, I have woken up in a body that didn't feel like mine. It was either I was too skinny or too overweight for my body, and I've had some experiences where, and it's like there's a little protective mechanism in our consciousness says, "Oh no, that's going to drive us. We can't have it that different. I'm going
mhm,
to take you back to where you originally were." Most of the time, if we actually have the ability to go to another reality, once we awaken in that reality, we are so frightened and so freaked out that our consciousness knows, I can't let you do this. So for the reason my particular example is this, I was dealing with death. Like there was no other place for my consciousness to go. All those other realities, I was dead. So I was kind of sucked into this reality. At least that's one theory I have, where there were all these differences and changes that may not have been Mandela effect, but it was because the uniqueness of my situation, my I did my consciousness couldn't go back over there where everything was normal. That
right.
might be one reason. That's just a theory. That's one theory, and I don't know. But I don't think that globally we've gone into big shifts in parallel realities. Each example I've read, very much like you, just appears to be just
Yeah.
people misremembering.
Yeah, I
So
mean, the interesting thing though with this stuff, like enlightenment and awakenings and things that come up that push
right,
synchronicities and push people in certain directions, it's interesting that to think about, like, is there some catalyst, and after that catalyst, you start to actually observe and recognize these things and these patterns and different, what most people would call coincidences, or do you think that they've always been there? And it's the person that's now becoming, awake to those things that are happening.
I think that it's possible. I mean, you've had things where you've woken up to the reality of something that, and all of a sudden you hear everything about it, right? I mean, um, it's the idea. I think it's the where you suddenly learn something. There's a word for it, and then all of a sudden you start seeing it everywhere,
Like a
right?
paradigm
Yeah.
shift or
Yeah, there's something that happens. It's like that information was always there.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think, when you look at this whole phenomenon, it's crazy, especially from our own point of view that,
Mhm.
sometimes sometimes when you're in a deep, dark place, you find light and that light leads you to more light and then you're now on the path to coming back to this better place, if you will.
Right,
And I wonder sometimes, why does it take to be down on your luck or
right. That's
depression, anxiety, whatever it is, to find that thing? And I also think that people that don't, I don't necessarily, I'm not a religious person. I mean, I
right.
grew up Roman Catholic, but I'm more spiritual than anything. But for a while I wasn't thinking about anything along those lines. It was just living day to day. with no regard to, we would think about like panspermia and that kind of stuff,
Right.
just to speculate. But I think that when you don't have a higher power of some sort,
Right.
whatever it is, I don't, I'm not talking about a bearded guy in the sky, but just some sort of higher calling that
Mhm.
life becomes like an open sea, and you get lost, and I
There's
think
something
that
to that.
you need some sort of guiding light, whatever it is, whether it's a memory or a person or a thought or a concept, or whatever it is.
Right.
So, what do you think about that kind of stuff? Do you think that we all need some sort of higher calling?
Absolutely. I just think that in general, the people that I meet that have some sort of higher power, it doesn't matter what it is. Um, they're just in a better place. They're able to deal with this stuff, not all the time, but also outside of that, what we were talking about, the reticular activating device in the brain, it's always looking for coincidences too. And so once you bring that idea that there may be some kind of higher intelligence or greater mind or whatever you define it as, the reticular activating device starts to show you examples. It's
Right.
it's always funny. I always see that, like you had mentioned on a pod, you look over at your clock and it says 11:11, and then you go in your mind, you go, well, is this somebody sending me a message? Is this some kind of coincidence? I kind of believe that our brain is looking for these things, and it
Hmm.
finds these coincidences. It's just like, hey, I'm going to go buy a black Subaru, and you go out driving and you see a black Subaru, and I don't think there's anything magical about that. But the thing that magical happens when you accept in the possibility of a higher power, that little part of your brain starts to say, oh, well, let me show you all the examples. And part of that process goes on. What you said about going to the deep depressed place, there's something to that, because it's easy as a matter of survival for us to get into our comfortable place, because
Hmm.
what need would we need to connect to that? And so, I have met people that have found this or corresponded to the idea of some kind of higher power, even just the idea that the universe may be aware on some
Hmm.
level or was
Sure.
aware at some point in time. And once they have that, it expands your awareness of other things. I don't know if that's how it was for you. Um,
Yeah, I talk about it a little bit on our synchronicity
right,
and weird mysteries episode. But for me, look, I've talked about it many times. I don't want to go into it too
Here
deep
we
because
go.
we've
all
talked
good.
about it so much. But I had severe OCD to the point where it's like I didn't even
Right,
want to leave the house. Like I was
yeah,
just afraid of all
I
sorts
have
of
been
stupid
there.
shit.
Yeah,
So in depression because of it, I think that
right,
and it's just like a bad mind loop or thought loop or so, something along those lines. So for me, being stuck in that for a couple years, I thought for sure that would just be my life. And a lot of people have suicidal thoughts because of these things. I never did, but I see a lot of
right,
people on forums and different things that I can't live like this and blah blah. It's
right,
sad. So I think that the way that society works is it's not there's you can go to therapy and they'll try and discuss your problems, but at the
right,
end of the day it's up to you and the way you look at the world. Partially, if you're scared of something, you almost have to face your fear a little bit. Like for me, I know from getting down to it, my OCD was predicated on fear of dying from diseases or germs, whatever. So
right,
for me, getting down to that base level and understanding that on top of doing other things and using THC, CBD, and
Plant medicines.
psilocybin and different things, when you get down to the base level and you do those things, sometimes those things allow you to reset your mind and then do the work on yourself that you need to do. And mainstream society will look at it as you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, and we're going to give you this medicine and you're going to go to CBD therapy. But in reality, I did those things and it actually kind of made it worse. Like I don't think
right,
Xanax is like a band-aid. Like if you take a Xanax,
right.
you're going to go to bed, you might feel better temporarily, but
It's coming back. Yeah,
what did it do? It didn't do
right,
anything. So those are just band-aids. So I think that when you get to the root of these things, it's important to understand that you can't just take some miracle pill and feel better. It's an
yeah,
all-encompassing thing. I got to pull myself up. I got to start thinking more positively. I got to start putting myself in better positions.
Right.
It's this whole thing. So for me, it was just an all encompassing thing, spirit, mind, body, whatever you want to say. And once you get on a good track, it starts to snowball, just like how it snowballed when you got into that pit. So
Right.
that's just my take
My
on it.
my journey was basically the same. I definitely had that same fear of death and just fear of general.
Mhm.
Something bad's going to happen. Um, Surprisingly, it wasn't after what happened to me, but it was. I'll just drink myself, and I'll just keep on drinking to
Yeah.
drown out these constant thoughts that I have in my mind.
Right.
And so, when I realized, okay, maybe I can't do this, I needed to change the way I thought. And the only way I could do that was through meditation. I could do that through going through the meditative process and getting to know myself. And that's kind of everybody's different.
Right.
But that's one thing that helped me get out of the house is
Oh
is
no, for
is the
sure.
meditation. Yeah.
Meditation's been super instrumental in uh my getting better as well. I think that introspection when you're in there, even it's not even just on yourself too. I'll replay discussions with my wife or
Right.
family members or whatever and be like, wow, I was kind of a dick. Like, even though it didn't seem like it at the time, when you replay it, it's like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that, or
Yeah.
something along those lines. So
Yeah, and our understanding of meditation is different. A lot of people think it's sitting in silence and you just sit in stillness and silence. And to me, I have a much more expanded. It can be like you said, you can go and have thought experiments.
right.
You can try different techniques. You can go through things that you've done in the past and try to understand them. It doesn't have to be a passive, I'm clearing my mind and
Yeah, I hate when people say that, like, you gotta
yeah,
sit cross-legged and then
right,
zero
right,
out your mind, so you're literally thinking of
right.
nothing, and that's fine too. I think that's probably a
There's
very
definitely something
calming
to that.
there's a very calming and
Mhm.
awesome effect to that version of it, but I think that for me, I'm more, like you said, thought experiment. I know
Right.
the way I think about meditation is what I would think of, um like what Tesla maybe used to do, where he would come up with
Exactly.
experiments in
That's
his
a great
head, laying
example.
there, and he would see how they would work in his mind. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying I'm like that advanced or anything like that, but
Right.
that's how I look at things in my own life, and
But
like,
no, I agree, and I've even had somebody I really respect, um, contact me and say, "What you're doing with meditation is wrong. That's not what it's supposed to be. It's not what the Buddha meant it to be. You're supposed to be you're not supposed to be
you know
trying
what
to
Buddha says to that person? Go fuck yourself.
go
You know,
for."
like, go fuck yourself.
What
Yeah, I
I've
was gonna
had
say.
that, and I've had that one. You're destroying something that's sacred. It's meditation, and you should not. It is only one thing, and it's not. And
No.
I have all kinds of different. When I wake up in the morning, I want to prime myself. I want to remind myself of really exciting things to be grateful for. To me, that's a meditation because then I'm going to go through the day and I've started off on a positive track.
Right.
I'm grateful, and at night when I'm going to sleep, I want to find a way to put myself into a deeper level of sleep. I have a recent video I put out on running simulations in your
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah,
I,
we've
I-
talked about that.
and I do. We have our minds are quantum computers. We really haven't tapped into what they can do, and a lot of times we can do stuff just by commanding our minds to do it. And why not? Let me run a simulation. If I want to buy this house, what are the results?
Right.
If I want to do this, let me run that in my mind, and then later on I might have some instinct. That's because I've been running simulations. You can run millions of them in my mind. I believe that we can do that. That's another example. I believe we can go back in the past and look at stuff in
Right.
the past, in the future. Those are all things I think we have the ability to do. We don't have to call it meditation, but it's definitely using our mind to expand our awareness of reality and even to influence it and change it.
It is meditation. I mean, because
It is
you're
meditation.
so
Yeah.
focused. That's what that, if
Right.
the so-called real meditation is focusing on nothing and living in
Right.
that moment, then actual this meditation that we're talking about is just, it's meditation, it's just a different
Right.
form. And the way I see it is, if people are capitalizing, like, there's transcendental meditation, there's
Right.
mindful meditation, there's meditation that you pay for. All right. So
Right.
get off your high horses, because there's a whole industry out there pushing these
Right.
agendas. And we're saying is, in the comfort of your own home, you can get to these different mindscapes
Right.
and mind places without pain or without,
Well,
doing
it's
it
just
a
like
certain way.
religion, you know. You
Yeah,
have
I
to go
do.
to church to learn
I do
about
think
God. You got to
though.
come to this place for it. So
Absolutely, that's a good point. But for me, I think wholeheartedly that when you do, there's a certain amount of discipline involved. No matter
Yeah.
what kind of meditation. I know when I started, my technique involves uh, being freshly clean, whether it's shower or cleaning up,
Hmm.
fasting in the morning, so you haven't eaten anything yet,
Hmm.
laying down in a dark, quiet room, and barely closing your eyes over your lid, like, and holding them there. So that part's the discipline part, because most people can't do that. Most people either like way shut their eyes hard, or
Right.
they open once they hear something or look at something, like something
Yeah.
takes them, whether it's a distraction. So when I do that, I've done it for 2 hours where I'm not sleeping and I'm not awake. I'm just there doing that, and I'm in an alternate thing in my head, and I get these waves of, like, it's weird when you close your eyes. I get these like waves of like light. They almost look like spotlights, and I try and like follow them,
Right.
or stuff like that. So I get some weird stuff going on with that, but I just think you're absolutely right with the whole these people complaining about like what meditation is,
Right.
and that might be their definition. That's fine, but who
Right.
are you to criticize? That's actually taking the practice of what it should be teaching you and using the opposite. So
Right.
that's super stupid to me.
And I'm particularly interested in natural states that create DMT in the mind. I believe, and I have had it multiple times, it's never going to be with the same intensity as an ayahuasca ceremony. I'm not going to purge or anything, but there, I believe through breathing and meditation that we can, I mean, DMT is in our bodies and we create it. And I
Hmm.
think, through the Wim Hof breathing technique, I've had several situations where I've been able to induce a DMT, at least I thought so. And I think that when people talk about opening their third eye, a lot of time they might be talking about a sudden release of DMT that they had in their, they didn't, they're different. They don't even know. They think that they had some activation of their third eye, and
Right.
really just DMT got released. Um, as you have discussed, we may be coming to the point where we believe the pineal gland can produce DMT. We can't. It's hard to prove.
I think you need to
Um,
tap into. I think that was the
live
thing. Is,
human.
yeah, you need to get into a live human, and who's going to
right?
allow
Who's going to
somebody to
do the
stick a
live?
needle into
We know
their
for
head?
as we know for sure that it happens in rats and mice. We know that
Right.
DMT is produced. So so that is what fascinates. I
I think
do
the
think
argument against it, though, is that the pineal gland is so small. I don't know if that matters, but
right.
I think that's the argument I've heard against it, is
I
that
think it might be in conjunction with other parts of the
could be.
brain.
It could be like some sort of
You know,
governor too, like it
right.
could be something that's just in our brain,
We know that
you know.
it's a receptor of light, so that it's similar to the eye. There are receptors in
Right.
the pineal gland, just like, so it's collecting light, even though it's not openly interfaced with light. We know that. We know there's crystals inside of it, so
Mhm.
that it's
So it's like,
resonating.
it goes back to our reptilian brain, where it's connected to, like the reptiles they do have an actual third eye, like you're talking
Right.
about, that has like a retina and like a lens and stuff like that. We
Right.
don't have that, but it could be some primordial version, or I mean, an advanced version of that, where, and I know it governs your circadian rhythms and all that stuff, which obviously has to do with your sleep cycles and that stuff. So yeah, I mean, there definitely might be something to it. I hate to, I'd like to see somebody do some sort of research or find
Yeah.
some sort of technique to look into that, because I think that
As you
whole thing you
said, I'm
mentioned.
open when I die. I say openly on YouTube, you can use my brain to see if DMT. Please go ahead. You can cut it open. I'm
Yeah.
ready to go. I'll definitely contribute to science in that way. Somebody's going to do it at some point, and we
Right.
may be we may come to a point where a lot of the visions that we're having when we die are just the DMT being released. We don't know that, and
Mhm.
part of me thinks that maybe part of it, there may be a lot more going on than we're
Right.
aware of.
Well, we got tons of endogenous chemicals too. It could be a mixture of
Yeah,
things.
it
It could
could
be
be.
something that we don't even know about, so.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's
But
that's my thought was, like, when you dream, how 1 minute could seem like an eternity. Maybe when you pass
right,
on, you are releasing that stuff, and then you get caught in some kind of eternity within
right.
that DMD being released. Who knows?
Vadim Zeland, the author I was mentioning before, believes that if that you can disappear in your dreams, that they're real places, and that we hear about people missing or going vanishing, and he has this weird theory that some of them got stuck in a dream. I don't know if that's true, but it's interesting.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had weird dreams where I'm looking at myself in third person, almost like it's a movie. So
Right.
I've had that. That's kind of weird.
The theory he has another book, Tufti the Priestess. The idea is when you're in a dream, you notice it's a script. You're playing a role, and it seems like everybody else is saying a script, and you're being pulled along, and it's not like you're interacting like you have control over it. It's a script that's already scripted out.
Right.
And so he's applying this concept that we are in a script just like a dream now.
Right.
That we're constantly, if you can wake yourself up and notice, okay, little triggers that notice you're pulling yourself into a script. You have a script that when we awaken inside of our dream and we can pull ourselves out of the script, it gives us more power and control over our emotions and reality. There may be something to that, but the idea that we are in the script is interesting. We're changing topics all over this place. If I'm throwing myself, I'm sorry.
Hey, man,
No, no,
that's
no.
how it goes sometimes.
I mean, I think all this stuff kind of relates to
Yeah.
meditation anyway. I mean, they're just different altered states, but I think the dreaming thing is interesting. I do
Right.
definitely have certain dreams where it's like that's unusual. It's something that I don't recognize anybody. I don't recognize the place.
Right.
I don't recognize anything about it. And then I have other dreams where it's like I had one dream just to recall basically off the top of my head. It's kind of stupid, but I had a dream where the movie what's the movie where Kev or Maurice where it was shot in first person with the alien coming down and it's bashing the city and the guy's got the camera and
Cloverfield.
Cloverfield.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
so Cloverfield. So it's basically Cloverfield, but I'm in the city we grew up in, which is Grosse Pointe, Michigan. So I'm running around to all these different houses that I'm already kind of knew from growing up in the area and hiding the basements and different
Right.
things. And it's like the movie's happening, but it's in a different place, but
Right.
with the same, aesthetics and everything. So it's just weird that we can recreate that too, or
That's
something
true.
you've seen. I've only
It
seen that
seems
movie
like
probably once
I
or
wouldn't be able
twice.
to do that when I'm asleep, to create
Right.
that kind of detail of the and obviously that's a story that probably is not a part of the multiverse. There's probably a separation here, but
No, absolutely.
yeah, but I think there's something to now. Have you been able to become lucid in your dreams?
Well, I do lucid dreaming, and I'll
You
tell
do
you,
lucid dreaming?
I do it almost every single day, and it's
Yeah.
not. It started by accident, so I'm kind of an insomniac,
Right.
and sometimes I can't go to bed, and it'll literally be 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So when I actually end up falling asleep, I'll have to take like a piss, like 8, 9 o'clock. So I've gotten 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and then I wake up, and then I go back to bed. And the second I go back to
Right.
bed is when the lucid dreaming starts because I know that because first of all, I can control certain aspects of it, and if I keep waking up and then falling back asleep, it'll keep happening as well. So I think that I don't know if that's exactly what that is, but I feel like
I
that's
think
what.
so. I think when we become better at lucid dreaming, we become better at lucid awakening. We
Mhm.
become better at, if we're constantly am I awake? Am I dreaming right now? Sometimes I'll ask that while I'm awake, getting into this habit, because then when I'm asleep, I'll ask that. It seems like,
Yeah.
uh, am I awake right now? Even though I know for sure I'm awake, I'm going to ask that question. I'm going to get into a
Mhm.
routine of it. And I don't know. I've noticed when I became more lucid in my dreams, that I became more lucid when I was awake. There's a little part of me that's questioning, is this real? Because you have that part of you when you're dreaming that needs to go, can I just go outside and fly? Can I change the table into a couch and start experimenting stuff? And there's a part of me that believes it's similar to awakening. I think they're related. There's a link, but
Yeah. So, but back to bringing it back to consciousness and meditation. I think the consciousness thing is actually super interesting, and I think that what you were describing earlier about how we're on the precipice of this awakening and people are becoming more involved. And I think when you look at ancient times too, that's probably what they would describe as like a golden era, or in the yuga cycles, like some sort of upswing,
right,
or you're at the pinnacle. So I think we might be on our way there. However, I think that right now there's a balance. So you have super awakening and all this cool stuff coming out and research, and they're
right,
finally looking at psychedelics and all this stuff for medicine and all these different cool things. But then you have, people shooting stuff up and killing each other. So I think that there is an opposite reaction, happening. And I think that obviously we want the good side to win, but at the
right,
same time, it's like what's going on the other side. And I personally, like, I'll bring it back to like what I said is like a higher power. And I think that when you're told that this day-to-day reality is all there is, and they don't know that for a fact, by the way, science, it's just what we know
Right.
so far, um, when they say things like that and people take that as the 100% truth and everything's just 100% materialistic and most all these people are reductionist, but your life sucks and there's no way out of it, then
Right.
you see the kind of violence and the kind
Mhm.
of mental illness and that kind of stuff. So my theory is, even if there is nothing else, it's better to believe in
It's
something
one oh, that
because
is just
because
so
it,
true.
because
Yes.
it will give people a sense of purpose and you won't see the kind of shit that you see.
Right.
So I don't know if that's, you know, by design or it's just people being ignorant or what it is, but I feel that in my soul that if you can get people to think more along those terms, we might have some better results in terms
Yeah.
of society. That's
I
just
think
my
there's a
opinion.
net benefit 100% to acknowledging this awakening, and just to even a small group of people being aware, "Oh, wow, well, the world's changing," and I think that the thought virus of it can spread even if it's not true. I think that the inevitable result is better, and it's a better world when we start thinking about those type of things. I I, I think we have a role. Everybody can push the balance. More and more people can embrace the idea of accepting love and we can a positive reality instead of just this hopeless that we're just going to die and it's going to be black and at the in this material reality that you're talking about. If that is it, if that becomes the norm, it's easy to fall into a very dark pit.
Yeah.
uh,
Well, that's
at
what
A
the
least
rut.
as
the
a society.
materials will say, that's what their version of death is that when you die, it's like going to sleep without dreaming. That's and
Right, you
that
just that's
and it
it.
sounds fucking terrible. And I'm not saying that that could be true, by the way, and I'm
Yeah,
not I'm
I
I'm
am
I'm open to that being the fact, totally.
right.
But I just think that with all the other stuff that we're seeing, until we can come to some sort of conclusion based on science, based on, you know, enough people looking at it and being like, that makes a lot of sense. I think that we need to be very careful about what agendas we're pushing to be,
Right.
like, even you look at like what you're taught in school, like elementary school, middle school, high school, you're taught it in a very specific way that this is the world, this is how it happened. This is, even since we've been in high school, the whole timelines for, empires and ancient civilizations and what was going on. Even look at Gobekli Tepe, what is it, 11,600 years
Right.
old. We were taught the oldest civilization was the Sumerians, like 4,000 BC, so
Mhm.
just these paradigm shifts just keep happening. So
Right.
it needs to be either taught with that, with like an asterisk, like, yes, this is how what we know of now. However, there's
Right.
possibilities that this could change. But we were never
We
taught that. It's a very black and white, and
Yeah,
I think
Mhm.
textbook.
life is gray, in my opinion. So,
I think there's definitely, and that's the beauty of it, is the unknown. It's something
mhm.
that I love, and I want to live in a world where there's all of this unknown. I don't want it to all be known, and I like to constantly be learning and new things, and I hope that that continues because we can all get into a paradigm where we think we know everything that's happened. It's just
Mhm.
not true. Um, so yeah, I agree with you
And that can go
100%.
for the stuff we're talking about too. You can get so
Yeah,
sucked into thinking there's
yeah.
more to consciousness, there's more to life after death, there's more to meditation. There's, we can, you know, but I say look at the benefits, like
Look at
look
the
at the
benefit.
benefits of psychedelics, look at the benefits of meditation. There's extreme benefits, and it's not just a woo-woo thing. Like you know, I'm doing looking at articles having to do with the health benefits of meditation too.
Yeah,
It's breathing, it's your heart, it's your, the way your brain functions, it's
you
all
will
that
live
stuff.
longer. You will be happier if you
Sure.
meditate.
And look at all the monks,
Yeah.
so.
Look at so my question, have you guys have talked to a lot of people that have, done ayahuasca and DMT. Have you talked to any of them that didn't believe in a higher power
Oh
that
yeah.
have done it? Okay,
um I don't know about on our show. We might have had, usually people are pretty realistic about it. They'll say,
right.
I think that this is what's happening, but I'm not sure, that kind of a thing. When
It kind of makes it a little bit difficult to believe that there's nothing when you have that experience.
That's what most people
Yeah,
say. But however, if you go on like when I promote our stuff or whatever, when you go on Facebook, pages and
Right.
groups and
Reddit.
different things, you're gonna get at least half of the people saying, "Oh, it's just an hallucination in your
It's just
brain,
an
just
hallucination.
enjoy it," or blah 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 blah. It's like, dude, you're missing the point, bro.
But
It's
when you have this feeling, it's a feeling. It's not a hallucination, isn't it? It's a feeling,
right,
awareness of this higher power. When you have these psychedelic experiences, I don't think it's a visual. We were talking about what we see visually, but a lot of
right.
times, what we can't explain when we talk about this stuff is the feeling.
Oh, I feel free, like
Yeah.
if it's not something that there's been trips, and I don't think
Right.
there's any bad trips in my opinion. I think that there's people that freak
Right.
out, and I think that there might be people that are predisposed to certain like schizophrenia and that kind of stuff, and that's terrible. And you should definitely not do psychedelics if you have that in your family or have
It's
not
true.
spoken to a doctor. But for me, I don't think there's ever been a bad trip in the sense that it was so bad that it like freaked me out. It's usually showing you something that you don't want to see or you've been
Right.
avoiding or putting off
It's
or
making you uncomfortable.
it
Right.
makes you
It's that
uncomfortable.
point
Yeah,
where you feel like you've lost a little bit of control and you want it to stop and it won't. That's probably the biggest example. Uh,
absolutely.
Mhm.
but in my experience, the fascinating thing about DMT and ayahuasca compared to acid, which I have had in the old days, the old acid from the old days seems like way better than the what
That
Yeah, the
old
old
that
Owsley.
Osley Grateful Dead acid will put you
that's
on your pooper.
I think they have they had some chemicals they used to make it that they can't get anymore, so it's just not the same.
Mhm.
But the difference between a great acid trip and is this feeling of it's like it's alive. The best thing, we obviously see the machine elves and all those things, but
Mhm.
it feels like it's alive compared to LSD. LSD is an experience I'm having, and then there's a little bit of that going on, but there's no doubt with DMT and ayahuasca when I've had it, I expected it to be more intense, but the difference was it felt like there was a living presence that was teaching me something, that was there to
Yeah.
teach me something. That was
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's what that most people call the entities, right? Whether it's machine
Right.
elves or spirits or Mother Ayahuasca, Pachamama, and a lot of people say,
Right.
Mother Earth, like that kind of stuff. So, I mean,
Well,
that's
most everyone that does it has a experience like that. They're reporting their
most
Right.
feelings
people
kind of
that break through. I mean, you'll see a lot of people on like threads and Reddit and stuff talking about like, how do I get to that place or how do I break through? Because it seems like some people aren't doing it enough or it's not as good or whatever it may be. But definitely, it seems like people that have done it enough have had at least one of those experiences where they
Right.
encountered, the entities as they're called. And I've had. One of our buddies was on talking about some book where it was talking about like how kind of what we were talking about with like parallel realities, that the machine elves are there um to weave together reality, that they are these entities that bring one thing together and combine it with the other thing, creating this new path or new reality or whatever, and that's their like goal or job or whatever. So I thought that that was kind of interesting based on what
I
we were
am
just
so fascinated by that. I am so fascinated by the universality of the hallucination. And I could talk about it for hours. I just think it's incredible, and I can't. I don't understand why we're not screaming from the mountaintops. Hey, everybody, we're all having a mutual hallucination on a regular basis of machine elves. Do you
yeah,
guys realize this should be on CBS News? Right?
right,
They should
Yeah.
come on today. We're going to talk about the machine elves. This is a
right,
because to
right.
me it should. I just want to, to me it's so fascinating. I really hope in our lifetimes we can get a better idea of what's going on, knowing that we probably won't, except if you have the
Right.
experience yourself and you just ask them and they might tell you.
Did you
Yeah.
watch our last episode? Because that's what our guest,
The information theory on
yeah,
yeah,
Dr. Andrew Gallimore is talking about sending people into that realm for extended periods of time.
right,
Maybe those people will be because I just actually
like
had an interesting
astronauts,
thought. Exactly, but
Yeah.
think about somebody that goes into one of these trips and comes back out. It's like a dream. It dissipates within
right. That's the
minutes or
thing, it just goes away and
right.
you want
But
it back.
what if you were there for so long that you started to understand it or build that
Right,
information within yourself so that when you come back, you have more of a, I don't know, maybe you come out after an hour and it's still the same thing as
Right.
doing it for 15 minutes. I don't know, but that's an interesting thought to look at for sure.
If this is a advanced research project, I will willingly volunteer if they
I
would
think
like.
that's what he was saying though. He's had so many people volunteer. I don't know.
Right.
And I'll film it. Let's do this.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think there's a specific timeline he said on it, but it's
Right.
definitely one of those things where I'm going to keep an eye on. I think
Yeah.
that they're doing a lot of stuff at like Imperial College and stuff, and obviously Dr. Strassman.
Right.
I was gonna say there's probably a bunch of hoops he has to jump through, make sure it's all on the up
Right.
and up.
But my
Right.
belief to people listening that don't have access to these things, and a lot of people don't have access to DMT and ayahuasca, and you can access this stuff with meditation.
I've
If
only
you-
heard it once. We were on Fish tour, following the band Fish when we were like 16 years old, and somebody
Right.
offered it. I had no idea what it was, and I wasn't going to take it. So,
All
I
right.
mean, I actually had an idea what it was, but like we had been on Irwood's looking at it, but I didn't know this guy was kind of sketchy. I didn't want to be smoking some weird powder,
Right.
So when you're 16 years old, you're a little bit more.
Well, you probably did there. I thought, I've been to many concerts when people offer you stuff, and there's always, I don't know.
Yeah.
Ganja
there's,
goo balls.
Right. And I just remember back in college, I'm fortunate. There was always that guy that had the bad trip,
Mhm.
and there's always that thought in your mind, I don't want to be that guy that has the bad trip. I believe I've tripped the trip. And
Usually
so-
control freaks.
Right.
Control freaks.
It's somebody that really believes the police are coming. That's
Or
always
that,
very more
yeah.
common.
Yeah.
That could be it too.
But I think it's rare. It really tells you a lot about yourself. It opens up yourself when you do these things. That's another aspect to it. It kind of, if you're a good person, you'll see a good person come out. But the little parts of you, sometimes the bad parts can come out. It just magnifies who you are. So
Absolutely. No, I mean, super interesting stuff. Is there when does your book come out?
it's probably in September.
Okay.
It's finished and just, have a good editor and covers being worked on. So
Nice.
yeah, and probably in September. Super excited about it. And
You gonna draw your own cover? Or?
no, I got a really good cover person that's done 20 New York Times bestsellers that is
Oh,
going to
wow.
be doing the cover. So when you look at the covers, it's interesting nowadays. It's all words. When you go to so I was talking to her about it, and she, pretty much it's in the old days, those old science fiction pulp covers, so yeah, we'll see. I'm excited about everything about it. It's like, as somebody that is a huge book fanatic and owns a bookstore, just to have a book out there, it's going to be exciting and fun. I'm excited about it. So
Nice.
it's always been
Congratulations.
one of my dreams.
Yeah, that's awesome. Looking forward to that. Do you have a website?
TheRealityRevolution.com is the
Okay.
and
We'll have to
for
put a link
coaching,
down below for you.
Yeah, I'll put a link. I do have your YouTube channel linked down below.
awesome. And for coaching, I have AdvancedSuccessInstitute.com.
Okay.
And if there's somebody out there that wants to transform their life, sometimes I can help. That's what I'm because I have a lot of other business. I'm a little picky, but I sometimes have people come along where we can apply some of these techniques we're talking about, and I can help them out. So AdvancedSuccessInstitute.com. But
Nice.
No, I mean, thanks for coming on. We'll definitely have you back on. There's probably
Yeah,
so
we
much.
barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, there's so much
Anytime.
stuff you can get to. It time flies so quickly.
I love this stuff. So yeah, I can talk about anything, anytime. Just let me know. I love it. So
Sweet.
and
Yeah. Well,
I love your channel, and maybe I should be doing an interview for my podcast with you guys.
That'd be fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can do that.
let us know. And
yeah,
is your
for sure.
podcast on like iTunes? Can people check it out?
Yeah, it's on all the places that you can find podcasts, on iTunes, on all the places.
All right, sweet. Well, yeah, let us know. We'll come on for sure. Just let us know when and where, and
Yeah.
we'll make it happen. And thanks for coming on. It's always a fun conversation with like-minded people. But like we said, there's so much more we could get to. So, but we'll catch you guys next time.
Sounds great. It was a real
Cheers.
pleasure to meet you guys.
Yeah.
Same here.
Peace.
Have a good one.